Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back to Kitchen Table Meta. Now, I'll tell you what, it's been a little bit of time, and I'm really sorry for kind of the lack of content in the past couple months. I really apologize, but I promise you guys the consistent quality content is coming back very, very soon. Now, what I've been doing is I've been working very closely with Pro Play Games at PPG to enhance the streaming experience. I feel, and so does PPG, that it's very important that we get the streaming experience much more professional, and that way it can enhance the game. That way new players, when they see our content, they see the coverage at these live events, they're going to go, wow, that's a game that I want to play in. And so that's what we're working really hard to do. But those enhancements are very quickly coming to an end. We have tons of stuff in works for the next regional, which is at Richmond. If you guys are anywhere near Richmond or want to make the trip, please come to the Richmond regional. I'm telling you guys, it's going to be amazing. We have some awesome stuff planned for you. If you haven't seen the previous regional videos, they're at the Otakon event, please go check those out. Those are on the Pro Play Games YouTube channel. I'll put a little link here. You guys can go check those out. Please check them out, watch a couple rounds, and put in the comments section below what you liked about it and what you didn't like about it, so I can continue to enhance the overlays and the experience moving forward. So guys, thank you so much. Again, I'm so sorry for that, but I promise we'll be back soon. I'm just really wanting to, really dedicated and giving you guys the best experience we can at the live stream events. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick little breakdown of the about the design concepts of Set 5. Now, Bandai just released an article about this, about their design concepts for their Miraculous Revival set coming out. The set actually looks pretty neat, and I'm going to go into a little bit, some of the things that I think are really cool, and some of the things that I think, maybe might need some work. Now, the really exciting thing about this is that in the article, they talked about their design ideas, how they felt the game is shaping up from set 1 all the way into the new set, which is super exciting to me. I love design. You guys hear me talking about it all the time in the channel. It's something I've worked with. I've worked in the actual game industry. It's a huge passion of mine. I just love game design. I love the how it's always evolving. It's a living, breathing thing that always changes. And Bandai is honestly, they're telling you guys, this is what we want to do, and this is what we thought was going to happen in set 1. This is what ended up happening. We were completely wrong about some of this stuff, but we actually nailed some of this stuff. So I'm going to talk about it, go through my experiences as a player, and also just as a game designer. Some things I think they did right, and some things I think they did wrong. So okay, so they kick off the article talking about game speed. In parentheses, they put kill turn. So this is something that's been a problem of recently, but it wasn't like that in set 1, and they actually do address this at the beginning. And so we're going to talk about that right now. Their first little comment. Oh, by the way, guys, I'm going to pop these comments up, over here somewhere for you guys to read along with me. Yeah. Anyway, so it says, following the release of Series 1, by observing play at events, we realized that players were playing more carefully and with far more tactical deliberation than we had anticipated. And honestly, you're going to hear me talk a lot about this in this section. And that is, I played at the first, Bandai sponsored events at Gen Con, not last year, I guess not the most recent one, but last year. It was for set 1. It was the first sponsored event. It was an awesome event. And you can tell after that event, at that event I got 3rd. They gave us a little trophy. It's like back here somewhere. But we talked about them. I showed them my deck. My deck was definitely a lot different than all the other decks at the event. And what happened was, I really think that Bandai, and actually I know this by reading this article and talking to them, that they expected the game to be much quicker. They expected people to attack each other every turn. They expected it to be this really fast-paced, action-packed game. And what happened is there was decks like that there. Anthony Hernandez's deck, for example, was a Champa deck that was very aggressive. Vegeta was a huge leader there. People were attacking very aggressively with critical. Ginyu was a big player there as well with the Ginyu Force cards. It was a very aggressive deck. But whenever I played the game and I saw the way the kind of meta was shaping up, I thought, what? Why are people attacking each other? It really doesn't make any sense. All I'm doing is giving you advantage. I'm giving you cards. I'm allowing you to awaken. I don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to set back. I'm never going to attack you. I'm just going to take my life with Vegeta to awaken myself, so I draw more cards. I also make myself more defensive that way. If I'm at 15,000 leader when I'm awakened and your leader's at 10,000, you can never really pressure me unless you use cards out of your hand. And I'm just going to use the Broly cards. I'm going to make you discard your entire hand, set there until I can play the 7-drop Beerus and kill you on turn 8 by destroying all of your energy. And that's how I played all my games. They were very uninteractive games, and the game pace slowed down a lot. Now, what happened after that was more slow decks came out. You had Soul Striker come out, you had Tricolor Ginyu to come out with Kobolas and stuff to kind of counteract these decks, and the format shifted, so it slowed down so much. Now, honestly, a lot of players like that format. I like that format. A lot of players right now wish we can go back to that type of format. I don't think a slow format is bad for a game. So like they literally put it here. They put that players were more tactical than they thought was going to happen. And I think that's awesome for a game. I think that's what you want. Now, the format at Gen Con was best of 1, 25-minute rounds. Now, if you draw, right, if you go to time, both players lose. You both get a loss, which was nuts. Everybody was playing super fast. We were trying to get through our stuff, but we were still able to play games that went to 8, 9 energy sometimes. Like, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility. It happened quite frequently, honestly. And so I don't think the game was necessarily slow at that point. It was actually kind of quick. It was just the games went longer. And honestly, what happened there was a lot of players that lost. So a lot of the players that went OX, for example, kept telling Bandai in their little feedback. They gave us this little feedback sheet, and everyone filled it out. And what they said was, if this was a best of 3 game, I would have won this event. I easily would have won this event. But it's not, so I didn't win, and that's not fair. I want this to be best of 3. And so what happened was, I really think that kind of put the pressure on Bandai to kind of shift the rules to a best of 3. And I don't think this game was ever supposed to be a best of 3, nor do I think it's supposed to be a best of 3 now. I think best of 1 is fine. I think you should slow the format down, make the games back like they were in set 1, set 2, make them very strategic, very, back and forth. There isn't much variance in this game, guys. Okay, you draw multiple cards a turn. You have a 50-card deck that you go through very quickly. And honestly, there's really, like, if you win game 1, obviously it's changed a lot now, because, going first and stuff is more, some decks are better than going second, things like that. But back then, it didn't matter if you went first or second. It didn't really matter too much. Most of the time, if you won game 1, you're going to win the rest of the games anyway. You're just a better player. Obviously, it's a card game. Variance is a factor. It does happen, but not in the scale of games like Magic, where the best of 3 format was made popular. And Magic, you can literally get unplayable hands. You can draw a card, you can draw 7 cards and have all lands or no lands and be like, okay, I have to mulligan. In that game, when you mulligan, you lose a card. So you go from 7 cards to 6 cards. Sometimes you have to mulligan to 4 cards in hand before you can actually have a playable hand. Of course, in that format, if you have 4 cards in hand, your opponent starts with 7, you're not going to win that game 80% of the time, probably 90% of the time. So of course, best of 3 is needed in that game. Our game is nothing like that. You always get a playable hand. You can always sit down and play a game of Dragon Ball. The games never are just one-sided. They never feel like, oh, I couldn't play the game. I'm sitting here with a bunch of lands in hand. It never happens. And if it does, it's due to deck building, not the game itself. So, I'm sorry for the little bit of a rant, but honestly, guys, I really think the best thing they could do for this game is make it a best of 1, best of 3 top cut. You quickly get people through the rounds. You open up the possibility for people to play control decks and other things. They don't have to worry about draws and stuff. And you still get that sideboard high-level play and top cut where, I think it really belongs. So that's my opinion. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comment section below. But I really wish Bandai would maybe tinker with the idea of doing best of 1 events. They do them all the time on side events. No one ever complains. Everyone has a good time. In fact, at the ARG side events and PBG side events, they're all best of 1, and no one has ever complained about those that I've ever heard while commentating. So, like I said, I think it's a fine format. We'll see. Okay, next little point that they talked about. They said, feedback from players around the time Series 1 was released tended to center around the long length of games, and we heard a fair bit in particular about tournaments going longer than expected. Again, I'm not going to touch too much on this because I kind of ranted it all out at the beginning, but again, here, like, the feedback from most of the players were like, hey guys, look, these tournaments are taking forever. They're taking so long. And that was because, the games took a long time, but I think, again, if you just make it best of 1, you make it 35-minute rounds, best of 1, the tournament's going to go super quick, and you can play whatever you want. It doesn't matter. If you have a slow deck, you don't have to worry about going the time because you can't finish 3 games, and the games will have strength dramatically. Like I said, the side events are best of 1. Everyone's super happy about it. No one complained about it. So that's just my opinion, but that's what I think would have really helped there. I said, but experienced players quickly grew used to the speedier pace and the amount of time required per game gradually shortened in comparison to Series 1, resulting in an even greater reduction in overall playtime. So what they're talking about here is that what they did to lower the time of tournaments was they went back and they go, okay, and you do this all the time as a game designer, by the way. There's a lot of factors that go into game design. Number 1 is always game speed, the time it takes to play a game. It doesn't, not even competitive games, just even board games, right? You sit down, you play, and you go, okay, it took us an hour to play this game. You have to factor in, is this the player's first time playing? How many new players did we have? How long do we have to read the rules? Were the rules unclear? Sometimes unclear rules can increase the time of game unexpectedly because people are trying to figure out how to actually play the game. And so what they're saying here was they thought, okay, look, everybody is playing the game super slow. These tournaments are going way too long. how do we fix this? And what they decided to do was go, okay, let's just make the game faster. Let's increase aggro. Aggro was struggling in set 1 and set 2, mainly because whenever in traditional games, you want to kill your opponent really quick. In this game, when you did that, you just gave them more cards. And then when you gave them more cards, the card advantage would help them defend against your attacks. But then when they awakened, they got even more cards and they were harder to kill because they went from 10k to 15k. And so you essentially were going, okay, I'm attacking you, I'm giving you more cards, I'm making you harder for me to kill, and I'm giving you, I'm just giving you every advantage by trying to kill you. And so because of that, only a couple players really had success with aggro, and it was just skilled card game players that had it. And honestly, most of the time, the more defensive deck would win. And so they said, okay, we didn't want that to happen, so we sped up the game. We're like, how can we speed this up? We'll just make aggro better. And that's what they did for set 3, which they talk about a little bit in here. And they say here, they say, recently we received a particularly large amount of feedback about game speed, and looking at actual tournaments, we've seen more than a few games end extremely quickly. So what they're saying is, okay, we did that. We created veggies, we created all these, we created flute, more Kaba effect, we made 1-drops better, and in order to speed up the game, and we did that. Maybe a little too much. We overtuned that a little bit. Maybe it's a little too fast. And then they said, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to add some more defensive cards back to the game in set 5. Sorry. And he goes, here's an example of some of the new defensive effects you'll find on cards. And it says permanent. This is a new effect that they're talking about. It says permanent during your opponent's turn if your leader card is color. And this card is, I think when it says color, it just means, because some people have been, maybe misunderstand this. It's just saying this is a placeholder, right? It'll say blue here. It might say black. It might say yellow. It's just whatever this is, whatever color it says on the card. And this card is in rest mode. Your opponent's cards can't attack leader cards, and this card gains minus 5,000 power. I think it's a cool effect. It reminds me a lot of the defensive cards we have now, like the Vegito and Bergamino. I don't the Wolf guy, I always mess up his name. Yeah, so it's very similar to those kind of effects. Those have been very popular. It's been a good way to have the control type decks. We've seen mono blue control. I put this in quotation marks for no reason. But yeah, so those effects have been really popular. They've been successful. People like those effects. This is a good way to do that. I like that idea. I think that's neat that we get those kind of effects. But I really wish that, and I'm actually in the process of working on a video talking about my 5 things I think need help in Dragon Ball. The 5 things I think that are scary to me in the Dragon Ball core design. And I think one of them, and I'm going to talk about here very briefly, is the lack of defense on the top tier cards, like on the higher energy cards, right? So if you play a Kaba, for one, that card is an aggressive card. We know that its effect is aggressively. Most players use that card as aggressive. Now, in most traditional games, that's how it works, right? In Magic, your 1-drops, and Pokemon, not Pokemon, I'm sorry, and Force Will, your 1-drops are going to be these aggressive things, right? Because they come out early, right? They're going to have either utility like Boo, or they're going to be aggressive like Kaba. That makes sense in design. It's fine. And then as we go up, we go up to 5-drop, the card doesn't really change in our game. They don't really get more defensive. They just get bigger power. They just become more aggressive or more harder to stop, if that makes sense. And traditionally in other games, this isn't how it works. So we take Magic as an example. In Magic, all your cards can be blockers. They don't have to have the blocker keyword. And I think that's something that this game doesn't do that I really wish they would have done, is made all cards have blocker, or at least the upper end cards have blocker. So your 5-drops, your 6-drops, most of those cards, in my opinion, should have blocker, right? So that way, if you're trying to survive the early game, once you play out your 5 and 6-drops, they're these big defensive powerhouses that your opponent just, the aggressive player just can't deal with. They're like, okay, you have this freaking 5-drop 25k blocker. Holy crap, I can't get through this. And I think that's something that that they really need to do moving forward. And I think it's an easy way to just increase the defense of the game for slower decks without making these different mechanics and going all in on it. So that's just my opinion. Well, I'll touch base a lot more on this when I make the video probably next week. But I just wanted to kind of touch base on this example that I think they can do to do that. Because like I said, in Magic, you play your big 6-drop out. It's a 10-10. There's nothing your opponent can do. They can't fight through that. It's very hard for them to fight through that. In our game, you play out a big, 30,000 attacker, and they're just like, whatever, attack you. You can't block. You're dead. You know what I mean? It feels kind of bad when you invest so much energy into something and it just sits there and does it acts the same way as a 1-drop does, or 2-drop. Okay, and the last thing they say, it says one of the goals for Series 5 is to return the game speed to a more appropriate level. without placing any restrictions on existing cards. I like that. That's a great goal. That's something they absolutely need to do. It's definitely getting to a point now where I think the game speed is a little too quick, at least for, I think, newer players. I think that more experienced players have found ways to slow the game down, but they're not very apparent and they're very hard to do. And so I think that you need to have those varying levels of speed to make the game, fun. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this going into the next topic, which we'll just jump right over to. Which actually, real quick before we move on to the next thing, I just want to recap really quick. The game speed I don't think was too slow in set 1 or 2. I think it was probably perfect. It's just I think the format was wrong. I think best of 3 has never been right for this game. That's my opinion. I do think that set 3 and set 4, those sets did speed the game up way too fast. And it's been it's been feeling like a different game. And I love the idea of them wanting to dial that back and get the game back more to this traditional feeling like it did back in set 1 too. Awesome goal, and I really hope that they pull it off. Okay, the second thing I want to talk about, and guys, I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker. Obviously, the game speed they talk the most about, so we're going to have the most to talk about there, but I'm going to go through these other ones kind of quick. So again, guys, any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Would love to talk to you guys about game design, my favorite topic to talk about. All right, number 2, deck archetypes. Now, this is something that I have been an advocate about. I've talked a lot to a lot of different people about this. I think this is something that, that Dragon Ball has really missed the mark on. In my opinion, if there's one thing that Dragon Ball Super card game has failed out, it's this, deck archetypes. It's something that I was the most excited about, and I think I have been let down the most by. And so what I mean by that is archetypes, if you guys aren't familiar, are different goals or different ways that your deck wants to play the game. A couple different archetypes we have aggro. That is a deck that wants to kill you as fast as possible. You have control. You have decks that don't actually play out, usually battle cards or, anything that wants to kill you early. They just want to set back. They want to control the pace of the game. They want to make sure that you can't do what you want to do until later in the game, and then they play out some big, heavy-hitting cards and take over the game that way. You also have mid-range decks, which, unfortunately, in my opinion, every deck that we currently play falls around mid-range deck. Dragon Ball Super is a mid-range type of game. What mid-range is that you just play good cards on turn 4 or 5, whatever. Sometimes 6. I don't know if 6 is probably more towards the high end of our game, especially now. Honestly, like 3-drop is probably the high end of our game right now. But set 1, set 2, even set 3 a little bit was a mid-range base game where you just played out this awesome 4-drops, awesome 5-drops, and just won because of that. You had the better 4 or 5-drops. You just won because you had those cards. But then you have subcategories too. You have tokens, which is a deck that makes tokens. Think of Chilled. Chilled does that. But he's had no support. No support Chill has got. So you have token strategy, which is very popular. You don't get it. You have mill strategies, which is, you take cards off the top of your deck and put it in the drop area. You force a player to do that. And if they have no deck, you win because, in our game, if you draw your last card, you lose. So that's a good strategy that's never been touched on in our game. You have graveyard-based strategies, which is kind of like what Overwhelm is trying to do. Those are very popular as well. We call them Reanimator sometimes. Those are super popular. We have tempo decks, which, since everything has haste, it's very hard to do, but tempo decks are very important, and we've really seen no research itself. I know people think that the current flute decks and stuff are tempo, but it's really not. They're just aggressive decks. They're just very good aggressive, or Storm or whatever. It's not really what they are. They're just aggressive decks that do their job very well. So we've seen a resurgence of aggro and mid-range, and that's it. That's really all our game has right now, and I think that's a big problem. We have all this really cool stuff. We don't have, we call them tribes sometimes, or theme decks where you have, why don't we have Ginyu Force deck? Why don't we have a new Ginyu Force card coming out every set that makes where you play it out and get all these awesome Ginyu Force out, and you're playing that Ginyu Force theme deck that buffs all their Ginyu Force. Or we don't even have cards that really buff all Saiyans, and that's a huge popular thing in our game. Why don't we have those theme decks? Why don't we have these different archetypes that would really be a lot of fun? It's also a really easy way to balance the game, right? If you make cards more narrow and make them more focused on certain archetypes, then you don't have to worry about stuff getting out of control. If Saiyan aggro is getting too good, like veggies, for example, if that's getting too good, you just print hate for Saiyans. If the gods control deck is getting too good, you just print out early drops that do really well against control. It's very easy to do. Once you have everything kind of tied up in these archetypes, it's very easy to balance, and it's a lot more fun for people to play. It creates more diversity. It creates more enjoyment in the game. But anyway, I'm going to go really quick and talk about this. The environment up to Series 4 saw aggro decks dominating, something we suspected the fast kill turn was responsible for. We think delaying the kill turn will allow more archetypes to compete. Absolutely. That's completely correct. If you die on turn 3, it's really hard to have an archetype, right? It's really hard to be like, I'm going to do all this really cool stuff. It's like, no, you're not, you're dead. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that. I can either play aggressive decks and try to kill you before you kill me, or I can play defensive decks that let me survive, the turn 3 kill and then kill you on turn 4. That's what the format kind of devolves to. That's what format we're in right now. That's fine. You just don't want the game to sit there for too long. You want to, you don't want it to stagnate there, which I think our game is in danger of doing, but it looks like they're aware of that and they're going to change that for set 5. Awesome, good news. We're rebuilding the kinds of deck archetypes players can construct from the ground up. Awesome. With the hope that this will result in a diverse play environment with even more variety than before. We just talked about that. Absolutely. The more archetypes you have, the more diverse the meta is. If you can play control, you can play aggro, you can play mid-range, you can play tokens, you can play mill, then you're going to have all these awesome leaders. You're going to have all these different diverse decks. One counters the other, and you have this really cool paper, rock, scissors meta that you always want to shoot for. You have something going on, and it's fantastic. So awesome goal. I really hope that they do that, and I really disappoints me that they haven't. It really, because like Dragon Ball is such a thematic game, and it just really surprised me that we haven't seen these thematic archetypes being explored yet. The last thing is Series 5 introduces new deck archetypes and rebalances the old ones. That's very important. There's so many good old leaders that we haven't seen any support for. We are designing Series 6 to continue this trend, and we will be establishing even more archetypes in Series 6. Awesome. Can't ask for any more. Thank you, Bandai, for acknowledging this issue with your game and are working really hard to improve it. Not even just Series 5, but also going forth in Series 6, which is fantastic. So awesome. Guys, that's my breakdown real quick of deck archetypes. Again, I want to cover this much more in future videos, but just remember, my real quick breakdown is that more deck archetypes creates a diverse meta, which is really, really important. It also can raise prices of cards. It can also make a more healthy, third market. I'm sorry, secondary market, third market. I don't think I'm even talking about a secondary market, which will allow you to, I need these cards are staples in this deck, so the price is going to raise, and these cards are staples in this deck. Currently in our game, we have this problem with you just take all the best cards, you throw them in a deck, and that's the best deck. Use the best leader with the best cards, and that's the best deck to play. And that's a problem whenever you create like our game doesn't have any restrictions in deck building, and that is a problem that can occur. And looks like that's something that Bandai has got hung up on a little bit, right? How do you stop players from doing that? Well, you just make powerful archetypes, and then it's a lot harder to do that because the archetypes have powerful synergies when the cards are played together. So it's definitely a balancing act. You don't want to make the archetypes too apparent to where you just like, oh, I want to play Universe 7 Goku. I'm just going to slam all the Universe 7 cards together and I have the best deck in the format. That's not fun because it doesn't require people to explore deck building, but the archetype does need to be there. So those are some of the pros and cons. Okay, going up, interactivity. This is something I love talking about. I love talking about interactivity in game design because players, especially competitive players, are the worst when it comes to this. I feel like interactivity is something that's very complex. It's very hard to get right. I think that Dragon Ball has done a good job with interactivity, but let's really quickly go through some of these points. It says, up to this point, we haven't designed many effects that can be played instantly to counter/respond to your opponent's actions for the following reasons. Number one, they have the potential to slow down the game. True, they do, and they just talked about them having some problems early with the game being slowed down. They talk a lot about how what really stinks is I have this awesome 6-drop. I'm going to play it out. I want to end the game. This is going to be easy. Watch this. Play it out, and then it's like, nah, Crusher Ball. Nah, your card comes in rest. Now you can't attack with it. My turn. Cool. I'm going to kill it. I'm going to play out 4-drop Beerus. I'm going to kill your dude. Okay, easy. Like, I just shut down your whole play with one card. True, it can slow down the game. That's very true. And a concern when it comes to interactivity, which is a very, very scary thing to add to a game and too much. Number two, related to the above, we wanted to convey the feeling of Dragon Ball's fierce and fast-paced battles. This is true. This is something you hear all the time. Fierce, fast-paced battles. Check it out. Dragon Ball Super. That's true. They talk about that all the time. That's something they're very, very into. And whenever it's like, I want to play this awesome Goku. Gotcha. It's like cold bloodlust. Okay, well, that doesn't feel very fast-paced. It feels like my guys come out and do nothing, and I just have to keep passing because you stop my stuff from doing stuff. So I don't want that to happen. That slows down the fast-paced battle. Sure, absolutely true. Number three, new players may get the impression that the game is difficult to play if counter/reactive cards become commonplace. This is another very smart thing when you're talking about interactivity. It happens all the time. Magic ran into this problem. They had a plethora of counter spells in the game, and new players kept saying, I hate counter spells. I hate playing this thing out, and then you counter it. Because I don't know that, new players don't know every card in the game. So they're like, I'm going to play out this awesome 6-drop. Yay! Mana Leak, you can't play that. Okay, well, that sucks. Next turn, we'll play out this other awesome 6-drop. Cool, Mana Leak, you can't play that. Dissipate, you can't play that. Snapcaster Mage, Mana Leak, can't play it. And it's just like, okay, well, why am I playing this game? Every time I try to do something, you won't let me do it. This isn't fun. I don't want to do this. It seems very tough. It seems very hard to play around this. A lot of times it isn't, but it can feel that way. And I agree with that. I agree. A lot of times when you add, and this is what I'll say, my opinion on it, is that a lot of times when you add interactivity to a game, you're often just lowering interactivity in the game. It may sound weird, but just because Crusher Ball, Cold Ball S is a perfect example of that. Those are ways to interact with your opponent's plays, but a lot of times it feels like you're the only person interacting, right? Your opponent plays something, you're like, your card doesn't do that. Okay, well, I just wasted my turn. So my turn's over, you got to interact with my thing. I couldn't interact with your interaction, so I just sat here and let you just interact with me, and I can't interact with you. This isn't fun. This doesn't feel very interactive. It feels like you get to do everything, and I just got to sit there and watch you. And that's very true. It happens quite a bit, and that's why designing cards that are very interactive can be very difficult. It can be very scary, and it has to be done gradually and at a restrictive way. You can't just throw them out. You can't just do them every turn. If you put too many interactive cards in your game, you're going to slow your game down, and you're going to make it very unfun. Unfun for one player, very fun for another player, which isn't good. So that's something they have to be very careful of, which they are, which I love. I think that's perfect. The next thing they say is however, what we've heard from the player base at large is that you want more interactivity in the game. With that in mind, we've created cards in Series 5 with effects that do not resolve immediately, but by paying specified costs, allowing you to indirectly respond to your opponent's actions. So this is what they're saying. They're saying, listen, you guys want more interactivity in the game? Cool, we got you. We're going to try to ease into the interactivity. We're going to try it, and here's a couple examples of ways we think we can do that by being interactive, giving you ways to be interactive, but also giving your opponent ways to respond to that interactivity. Just not making it instant, not making it uninteractable. So here's some of the examples they gave. Active Main 2. These are effects that are going to be on battle cards. Active Main 2. Your opponent has 4 or more battle cards in play. Choose all of your and your opponent's battle cards with energy cost 4 or less, ignoring barrier, and KO them. Great. This is an effect we've been asking for a lot. It's a board wipe. It's an effect that will KO all of your opponent's cards, which is great. It's a good counter to aggressive strategies. Most of the time when you play aggressive strategies, you have to be careful of how you play them, right? You can't just play out your whole hand and go, you're dead, because if your opponent plays a board wipe the next turn, you just discarded your whole hand, essentially, right? Our game is a lot different because you have haste, so board wipes are going to be a lot less powerful just in particular because you actually get play out of those cards, where in other games you usually don't. You play them out, you have to wait a turn. If your opponent kills those cards, they've got no use at all. So I like this. This is a cool way to do it. You can play this early, and you can go, okay, pass, and your opponent's gonna be like, okay, crap, I have to either get rid of this card, or I have to not play as many cards out. I have to bait it out. I have to play maybe 3 of my powerful cards out and let them wipe it, and then I play out the other set of cards I have in hand to take over the game. Love it, fantastic. It also ignores barrier, which is great. It's something we need. Is more interactivity towards barrier. The second example they give is Active Main 2. Place this card in your drop area. If your opponent placed a card in their energy using a skill during this game, choose one of your opponent's energy and place it into its owner's drop area. Again, this is a direct counter to the SS3 Goku decks that's been very, very powerful. There's 3 ways you can win this game. You can go board advantage, hand advantage, and energy advantage. SS3 wins by energy advantage, and this is a great way to punish that. We've had a lot of counter to the other 2 ways to win, which is board advantage and hand advantage, but energy advantage has always been that thing that's been really hard to counter. It can be scary to do, and this I think is a great way to counter that, and a good counter to these SS3 decks that's want to excel out energy and get you from that energy advantage. Last thing I'll touch with the interactivity is a lot of games are really toning back on this instant speed counter spells, and a lot of games are doing it very well. A good example is Hearthstone. They've done this. They don't use you can't play cards on your opponent's turn, so they introduced the secret mechanic, which is super fun. If you don't know about the secret mechanic, it's really cool. You take a card, you put it in your secret area, and all the secrets cost the same for that class. So that some of them, like for example, they might all cost 2, and so when you play it out, you're like, oh crap, they just played a secret. Okay, what could that be? And each secret will trigger off different things, like when your opponent attacks, when your opponent plays a card. And so what competitive players will do is they'll go, okay, which secret will blow me out the most? Okay, this card that when you attack, it destroys my guy. Okay, let me attack with my 1/1 and test it out. Let me attack. Okay, I did. It wasn't that secret. Okay, cool. Let me play a bad card out of my hand. Okay, it wasn't a counter spell. Cool. And they can play around that way, which is really, really fun and very interactive for both players, right? It gives one player a way to interact with the board. It gives another player a way to play around it. And that is how you do interaction the right way. So always remember that. Just because you're doing a bunch of things on your opponent's turn, don't call that interaction, because your opponent a lot of times is just standing there going, okay, cool, I can't do anything. This game already has a tremendous amount of interaction just with the combo step. That is something that always gets overlooked. I hear no one talking about that, but the combo step is honestly one of the most interactive things about this game, and that is where your interaction is, and that's where the game is the most fun. So do not worry about interaction. They're going to work with that, but honestly, guys, don't be preaching about interaction too much. Our game is very interactive the way it is right now. We just need, I agree, we need some cool, new, interesting ways. That's never a bad thing, but we don't want to get into this loop where it's too much interaction, because that can often lead to no interaction. Okay, last thing we'll talk about very briefly, guys, because I don't want to talk about this without seeing the whole card pool, but they did reveal the Wish Leader cards, which are the Shinron cards. They look really, really cool. I actually love the Wish mechanic. I'll actually talk about those cards very quickly. Again, guys, this video is already running a little bit longer than I expected, but again, that's me. I like to talk. We know about that. The two that I'll talk about real quick are the Dragon Ball Leader card and then the Shinron Leader card. I'll pop them up over here so you guys can see them if you haven't seen them already. But it says, permanent, this card can attack, 10,000 power. Active main, switch this card to rest mode. Choose up to 2 Dragon Ball cards from your deck or life and add them to your hand. Then shuffle any areas you look through. Really cool, cool ability. And then Wish, instead of Awaken, it says when there are 7 Dragon Ball cards in your drop area, choose up to 1 Desire. Again, guys, we don't know what Desire cards is yet. Those haven't been released. Again, that's why I don't want to talk too much about these cards. I can't comment on them without knowing what everything means. But it says choose 1 Desire card in your drop area, add it to your hand, and flip this card over. When the Dragon Ball card flips over, it flips over to our boy Shinron. Looks sick, awesome art in the card. Permanent, this card can attack, keeps that permanent. Active main, once per turn, choose 1. Draw 1 card, choose 1 Desire card in your hand with an energy cost less than or equal to your current energy and activate its main skill. Again, no idea how good that is. Don't know what Desire cards are. Last, remove 7 Dragon Ball cards in your drop area from the game. If you do, choose 1 of your battle cards and it gains plus 10,000 power and triple attack for the duration of the turn. Then flip this card over and end the turn. Now, this is really cool. Their goal here is to create cards, leader cards that awaken a new way. I completely agree with that thought process for them. Honestly, I think that this design of leader cards is probably how the game should have been designed just from the start. I think, hurting yourself to awaken quicker just doesn't feel right from a design standpoint. It doesn't really make too much sense from the Dragon Ball lore either. And so I think this is much better. I like it. It seems thematic. It seems really cool. I like that both players are trying to, build their card and their deck in a way to search out these Dragon Balls so they can awaken and be powerful. But if they use their big ultimate ability, then they go back to their weakened state. It feels really good. I like it. Seems really cool. Now, my one criticism is it seems very weak to aggro, guys. The card can attack, which is fine, but you get 10,000 power on the front. That's scary to me, right? And the only way you can not have 10,000 power in the front is to find these Dragon Ball cards, which we don't know how easy or hard that's going to be. Again, we don't know. I haven't seen the whole card pool, but it's definitely scary to me. I honestly think they should have increased the base power on these cards because they can't attack. So just make them 15,000 on the front, 20,000 on the back. That makes it so it's harder for aggressive decks to kill you, and it gives you time to set up these Dragon Ball combos. Again, don't know how hard they would be. Maybe they're really easy. Who knows? But it's scary to me. It's scary that you're stuck at 10,000 power until you awaken with these Dragon Ball cards. It seems it's very possible that they can be abused. And the last thing that they talked about at the very end is they said that they're adding deck types that tie each color's unique qualities to character flavor. With this set, we've designed cards that better express the unique qualities of each color through the flavor of the characters. And I think that's the best thing that they can say. That's something that's very common in games when they start out is they don't have their color identities yet. They haven't learned what they want all the cards to do. And I think with this statement, what they're saying is we're figuring out, we think we know what all the colors, what we want all the colors to do, and we want those to be separate, unique things. Right now, something that's very worrisome to me with this game is that they're starting to print cards that all do the same thing in all the colors, right? You're starting to get Kaba in green, getting Kaba in red, getting Kaba in blue. It's just feeling a little too similar, right? And then what's going to happen is when all the colors are the same, you just play the 2 best colors and you win the game, right? That's not fun for anyone. So I like that they're saying, hey, we're going to tile that back. We're going to make the colors have unique abilities, and that way you can you might play blue, which might be really good at energy manipulation, but have really bad early game threats. So if you tie that with red, then you that might have really good early game cards. Now you're having a deck that has good energy manipulation and good early game, right? And I think that's fun. That's how you patch the holes in your deck's problems, is by adding a color that does that. And I think that's perfect game design. If they can pull it off, it's very, very exciting. All right, guys, so that's my thoughts and analysis of the design concepts for the Set 5 set, Miraculous. What is it? It's Miraculous Revival. Super cool set. I'm really, really excited about it, and I hope you guys are too. Guys, definitely check me out. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe at my channel. It really means a lot. It really supports me. Again, sorry for the lack of videos, but we were working really hard in conjunction with PPG to really increase our live streaming for these events. Like I said, we're almost done, so we're going to get back that consistent quality content, but I still have some more adjustments to do for the next couple regionals, and I'm really excited. Also, something that's really cool is I'll be doing a box opening for the Warhammer Age of Sigmar Champions trading card game, which is a really, really cool card game. I haven't had a chance to sit down and play it too much, but the little bit I played at Gen Con and a little bit I played with some friends and stuff has been fantastic. So I'm going to do a box opening. I have 2 boxes here I'm going to open. I'll put them up on the channel so you guys can look forward to that too. You might see another card game that you guys like to play to hold you over for these regional events. Guys, thank you so much for the love and support. Honestly, could not do this without you guys. Love you guys very much, and we'll see you next time.